Hi there, I'm Vincent Bos, and I'm a life coach, relationship coach, and breakup coach. You can change the language of this podcast in the YouTube video settings. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing dumper thoughts after months of ghosting. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. Subscribe to my weekly support emails. The link is in the description. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing dumper thoughts after months of ghosting. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, it can be a confusing and scary time. If someone ghosts the other, it can be even scarier. In today's podcast, I'm discussing 3 points to consider regarding your ex-dumper's thoughts after months of ghosting. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is you ghost them. Now let me know in the comments if you have ghosted your dumper. Have they reached out to you since the breakup and you have not got back to them? Let me know in the comments and let's see what the community thinks. And point number 1 is all about that concept. You, as a dumpee, ghosting your ex, the dumper. And although at first that might sound confusing or unlikely, as I've just explained, it is very, very possible. Unfortunately, for various potential reasons, your now ex, the dumper, lost romantic emotional attraction, and when it hit the necessary low point, they actioned for breakup. They dumped you. Now at that stage, you would quite understandably be thinking, well, my ex doesn't want me. So this could have caused a whole range of negative emotions within you. Amongst them could be frustration, anger, and bitterness. So if and when your ex dumper changes their mind and reaches out to you, you might act in a way where you decide to ghost them. You don't respond. You don't acknowledge it. You flat out ignore them. So what happens if this took place and months have since gone by? So just to paint that picture a little clearer once more, your now ex-dumper ended your relationship. At some point in the future, it could be weeks, months, or years later, they reach out to you. Now maybe you understand fully why, maybe you have no understanding as for why, but when you receive this message, and more than likely it would be a text, when you receive this contact, you don't respond. Maybe you didn't even read it, but you know they sent you that message. Perhaps you did read it, but again, you didn't respond. You have ghosted them. Now since this moment of ghosting took place, months have gone by since then. And this is what we're talking about here. When we're talking about in today's podcast, dumper thoughts after months of ghosting, point number 1 is from your perspective as a dumpee. If you ghosted them and months have since ticked by, what would your ex-dumper be thinking? Well, it is important for me to say that obviously there is no guaranteed path of what happens from this point, but there are definite correlations that I have seen through the many years that I've done this job, and through the many, many dumpers I've spoke to over the years. I found out from dumpers themselves that a lot of them will have only a certain amount of reach outs that they are willing to give their dumpee. Now this might be 1 reach out, it might be 2, it might be 3, but it is very unlikely to be forevermore, and more than likely to only be 1 or 2. Unfortunately, quite often, it is just the once. Now, the reason for this is your ex-dumper knows full well that they broke your heart. They know full well the emotional damage they have caused you. They didn't mean to most of the time. They felt they had no choice. They felt for themselves to live a forever happiness, they couldn't maintain that relationship. For whatever reason that may be, they didn't feel that it was satisfying or fulfilling at the time of a breakup. It doesn't mean that it wasn't in the past. It doesn't mean that it wasn't really, really powerful, exciting, wonderful, and loving for a huge amount of time. But sadly, by the time of a breakup, they were not feeling it, and they made that decision. More than often, they didn't want to hurt you, but sadly they did, and more importantly, they know. So they know they hurt you, they know they broke your heart, and they also acknowledge that by them somewhat changing their mind, and again, some dumpers will come at this from a perspective that they have definitely changed their mind. Some will come at it from a slightly different angle, which is they just feel compelled to message you. They don't really know where this might lead. They're just intrigued to see where it could go. Maybe they see it as a potential friendship, which as a dumpee I don't suggest you accept, but that's for another podcast. But they might come at this from a feeling of just being compelled to message you, not really sure where it could lead, but certainly now open to reconnection. Now, whatever reason they reach out to you, if you ignore them, lots of dumpers will see this as almost deserved. Almost as if, yeah, I get that. I broke their heart. I've now reached out and they have ignored me. I get that. I understand it. I take it on the chin. I almost respect that decision, and hence I'm not going to bother them again. And that is something that I've heard from dumpers fairly often. Now, sometimes a dumper might tell me, look, I'll try again later down the line. But I've heard from so many that they will only do it for once. And hence, if you are a dumpee and you do want your ex back, I will always suggest that you reply to your ex for dumper if and when they reach out to you. Now, it doesn't mean you do it forevermore. If they reach out to you, it doesn't lead anywhere. Then 3 months later, they reach out to you. It doesn't lead anywhere. And then 3 months after that, they reach out to you. I get it. At some stage, you're going to stop responding. But if you are looking at this through the prism of wanting to get your ex back, and they reach out to you, and you don't reply, then months down the line, there is an increased possibility that your ex-dumper is thinking to themselves, I'm not going to reach out again. I respect my ex-dumpee. I did at some stage change my mind. Maybe even now they still feel that new longing towards you. It could even be somewhat increased by you ignoring them. Although that is a very, very risky strategy, because although in some respects it could grow that intrigue in your dumper's mind, it's going to come a point where they think, I need to move on with my life. I've ended the relationship, it wasn't working. I then kind of had funny feelings and wanted to reach out to my dumpee, possibly open to reconnection. They ignored me. If anything, I might start to have these feelings again growing, but my logical brain is telling me I shouldn't be going there. Something isn't clicking, and hence I'm going to move on with my life. So if as a dumpee, you're in this position where you did ghost your ex-dumper after they reached out to you, and you're wondering, what are they thinking months later? Well, it's often that they respect you, but it's also often that they're thinking to themselves, well, I'm not going to try that again. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like and hype this video. If you like my content, subscribe to the channel to keep updated. And point number 2 is they ghost you. So now we're going to flip things round. Your ex-dumper became your dumper due to them ending your relationship. And now, in this version of events, you as a dumpee continually reached out to your ex. So they end the relationship, but you don't respect their decision. You can't accept the relationship is over, and you keep chasing your dumper. They've ended it, you won't take no for an answer, you keep reaching out, and your ex-dumper ignores you. Now maybe initially they responded, but it's come to a point of where they have stopped replying. They are in essence ghosting you. They've disappeared. You're not hearing from them again. Even if you reach out, you get nothing back, and they are certainly not doing anything towards you, which suggests that they want to talk. So what is your ex-dumper's thoughts months after this ghosting? So let's look at it from the angle that you were reaching out, maybe they replied at first, then they've just stopped. But that then triggered you into thinking, actually, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm not going to reach out anymore. They've ended the relationship. They are now no longer replying. I'm not going to do this anymore. So from this point, you have stopped trying to connect with your dumper, and months have ticked by. What is your ex-dumper likely thinking after months of ghosting in this regard? Well, there are two ways of looking at it. Firstly, they are going to have become very frustrated indeed by you continually reaching out when they ended your connection. As heartbroken as you may be, you must respect their decision. Of course, at the time of a breakup, it's understandable for you to want to say your piece. We're not talking about that. We're talking about when the dust has settled and you keep reaching out. That is going to annoy your ex. The level of romantic emotional attraction that they felt for you was already low, and sadly, it fell even lower. Now, when you actually stopped sending you messages, presumably connected to when they stopped replying, when they, in essence, ghosted you, that would have started a slow, steady process of healing for your ex-dumper. Now, we can't guarantee that they will ever get to the stage necessary for them to want to reach out to you. But it does sometimes happen, and hence if you want to get your ex back, I would always suggest that you go into the no contact rule. And hence, even if you're thinking, well, I've probably blown it, I am a dumpee, I kept reaching out to my ex over the course of a year, the breakup was more than a year ago, I kept reaching out, what is the point now in me stopping? Well, there is a point. You must stop. Not only is it going to start the process of healing, but if you don't stop, you could get into some very serious trouble. There is a line which is crossed of where your behaviour could be deemed as stalking. You don't want to be known as a stalker. You don't want to get in trouble with law enforcement. Please stop. But also, and more importantly from a connection standpoint, this will begin the healing process. Very slowly but surely, your ex will start to respect the fact that you have stopped. They will, of course, remember all of the times you did reach out, but they will respect that you have finally stopped, and slowly but surely, that will start to regrow levels of romantic emotional attraction that they feel towards you. Now remember, of course, there will always be a foundation of this, because you had a romantic relationship. You're not starting from ground zero, but depending on how you've behaved post-breakup, it could be pretty low to the ground. As the months tick by, there is a slow and steady increase in romantic emotional attraction, and for some dumpees, this will lead to their ex-dumper eventually reaching out. Now, this will only happen if that level of attraction has reached the necessary high point. It won't happen every time, and the lower it has dropped, the harder and longer journey it is for it to hit the heights it needs to do. So I would suggest that if you are now thinking, it's been months since my ex-dumper ghosted me, it's been months since I reached out to them, they didn't reply, but yes, I have now stopped, and you're thinking, what is my ex having in their mind? I would say if it has been months, they are now on the way to likely, of course I can't guarantee this, but likely forgiving you for what in their mind is disrespect. Now you might argue against that and say, well, they disrespected me, they dumped me. But you also have to consider the thought that they made a decision where they wanted to end the relationship and you wouldn't listen to their wants and needs. You didn't give them the grace that they deserve as a human being to make their own decision. Now, I'm not saying who is right and who is wrong in any relationship dynamic, but if somebody doesn't want to be in a relationship, they have the right to not be in it. We can't force someone to be with us. We can't say, you must be with me because I want you to. That is not how it works. And surely if you think logically, you only want to be with someone who wants to be with you. So as the time has ticked by, that forgiving process will take place. And hopefully you might also be forgiving your ex-dumper for how they treated you. This is a two-way street. And hence, there is a much better chance now of possible reconnection than there was before. But, as I've said, nothing, sadly, can be guaranteed. And often, this will set the pace of change to be on a completely different trajectory than if you would stop contacting them as soon as the breakup took place. I often hear of reconnections which were more than a year later, and when I hear of these, they are often connected to the fact that the dumpee kept reaching out for a certain period of time. In essence, it is restarting the clock of what is necessary for a dumper to eventually miss them. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. This is the best and diamond level of support that I can provide. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. Talking about your feelings can also improve your mental health. It helps prevent the buildup of negative emotions, which can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical health issues. Speak your heart to free your mind. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast. If you feel that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description. And point number 3 is ghosting ever appropriate? Now, if you feel that this podcast could help others, please share it in breakup communities, groups, and servers. Let's help as many people as possible. Now, is ghosting ever appropriate? In my opinion, you should always try and find a way around not having to ghost someone. But sometimes it will get to the stage of where you have to do it. But if you have to do it, I would like to tell the person what is coming. And hence, you could argue it's not really a ghosting because you are telling them, but I'm not going to reply further. So whether you are a dumper or a dumpee, if you feel things have got to the stage where you no longer want to engage with the other person and you feel that they keep reaching out to you, again, you could be a dumpee and you could be thinking, well, they ended the relationship and now they think they can come back? No, I'm not having that. Or maybe you are open to the idea of reconnecting, but you're not going to be open to it unless they say this, that, or the other, and instead you're getting messages which you just don't believe satisfy what you are requiring. Okay, that could be the perspective from a dumpee, or maybe you're listening as a dumper and you're thinking, the dumpee is just not listening to me. Whatever your angle and perspective, if you get to that stage where you believe the other person is not listening or respecting or just upsetting and frustrating or even worrying you, instead of just ghosting them completely, I would give them that warning. I would say something along the lines of, look, just to let you know, I will not be responding to any further messages. Okay, just something as simple as that could be what you do before you actively stop responding and you actively stop reaching out yourself. And of course, we never know what the future holds, but you need to make sure you're fairly confident that you are not going to change your mind a week later. Okay? If you are on the fence about things, don't send such a message. You should only be doing that if you are fairly confident that no time soon would you be changing your mind. Of course, we don't know a year down the line how you're going to be feeling, but if you know that it's not likely you're going to change your mind, that is when you might send such a message. I do believe it is a better, more respectful and polite way than just disappearing and vanishing, okay? But you, of course, must do what you feel is right. At the end of the day, if you feel that you are troubled by the messages you are receiving, you may need to speak with friends and family. You may need to even contact the authorities, whether you are worried for yourself or you're worried about your ex, okay? It could be that angle as well. But if you feel that they are just bothering you, annoying you, frustrating you, not listening to you when you say, I don't want to talk anymore, you could send that message I suggested, or perhaps, sadly, you might just vanish.